Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Gopi Janavalabha Girivadadhari. Gopi Janavalabha Girivadadhari. Yashodanandana Braja Janaranjana. Yashodanandana Braja Janaranjana. Jamuna Tiravana Chari. Yamuna Tira Vanachari. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Gopi Janavalabha Girivadadhari. Gopi Janavalabha Girivadadhari. Yashodanandana Braja Janaranjana. Yashodanandana Braja Janaranjana. Yashodanandana Braja Janaranjana. Jamuna Tira Vanachari. Yamuna Tira Vanachari. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Oh, broken. That one's broken too. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. So today we'll hear from Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 7, Chapter 10, Text 2. Now, I want to make sure I don't do it wrong. Do we do it word by word first? Yes. One pada at a time, whole verse? Okay. Shri Prahlāda Uvacha Ma Mam Pralobhayot Patya Saktaṁ Kameshu Tair Varai Tatsanga Bhito Nirvinno Mumukshus Tvam Upashita. Shri Prahlāda Uvacha Mamang pralobhayotpatya Saktang kameshu taivarai Tatsanga bhito nirvinno Mumukshustvam upashrita Mamang pralobhayotpatya Shaktang kameshu taivarai Tatsanga bhito nirvinno Mumukshustvam upashita. Was that 3? Oh, okay. Don't want to do anything wrong. Sri Prahlāda Uvacha Mamam pralobhayotpatya Saktang kameshu taivarai Tatsanga bhito nirvinno Mumukshustvam upashrita. Others, please. Vaishnavis? No?
Sri Prahlāda Mamam pralobhayotpatya Saktam kameshu taivarai Tatsanga bhito nirvinno Mumukshustvam upashritaha.
Word to word. Sri Prahlāda Uvacha. Prahlāda Mahārāja said to the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Ma, please do not, Mam, me, Pralobhaya, allure, Utpatya, because of my birth in a demoniac family, Saktam, I'm already attached, Kameshu, to material enjoyment, Tai, by all those, Varai, benedictions of material possessions, Tatsangabhita, being afraid of such material association, Nirvana, completely detached from material desires, Mumukshu, desiring to be liberated from the material conditions of life. Tvam, unto your lotus feet. Upashita, I have taken shelter. Translation and purport by His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada. Prahlāda Mahārāja said, "My dear Lord, O Supreme Personality of Godhead, because I was born in an atheistic family, I'm naturally attached to material enjoyment. Therefore, kindly do not tempt me with these illusions. I'm very much afraid of material conditions, and I desire to be liberated from materialistic life. It is for this reason that I've taken shelter at your lotus feet." Responsively, please. Prahlāda Mahārāja said, "My dear Lord, O Supreme Personality of Godhead, because I was born in an atheistic family, I'm naturally attached to material enjoyment. Therefore, kindly do not tempt me with these illusions. I'm very much afraid of material conditions, and I desire to be liberated from materialistic life. It is for this reason that I have taken shelter of your lotus feet." Srila Prabhupada's purport. Materialistic life means attachment to the body and everything in relationship to the body. This attachment is based on lusty desires for sense gratification, specifically sexual enjoyment. When one is too attached to material enjoyment, he is bereft of all knowledge. As stated in Bhagavad Gita, those who are attached to material enjoyment are mostly inclined to worship the demigods to procure various material opulences. They're especially attached to worship of the goddess Durga and Lord Shiva, because this transcendental couple can offer their devotees all material opulences. Prahlāda Mahārāja, however, was detached from all material enjoyment. He therefore took shelter of the lotus feet of Lord Nṛsiṁhadeva, and not the feet of any demigod. It is to be understood that if one really wants release from this material world, from the threefold miseries, and from janma mrityu jara vyadhi, birth, death, old age, and disease, one must take shelter of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. For without the Supreme Personality of Godhead, one cannot get release from materialistic life. Atheistic men are very much attached to material enjoyment. Therefore, if they get some opportunity to achieve more and more material enjoyment, they take it. Prahlāda Mahārāja, however, was very careful in this regard. Although born of a materialistic father, because he was a devotee, he had no material desires. Anyabhilashita shunyam. Om ajnanatimirandhasya jnananjana shalakaya chakshurun militang yena tasmai Shri Gurave Namah. Mukhaṁ karoti vāchalam pangum langhayate girim yat kripatamahang bande Shri Gurun dinataranam. Shri Chaitanya manobhishtam sthapitam yena bhutale swayam rupakadamahyam dadati svapadantikam. Nama Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Preshtaya Bhutale Srimate Bhaktivedanta Swaminiti Namine Namaste Saraswati Deve Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Paschatya Deshatarine Panchakalpa Tarubhyascha Kripa Sindhubhya Evacha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namah. Sri Prahlāda Mahārāja, Māmaṁ Pralobhayot Patya. Come on, you're supposed to do it. Saktang Kameshu Tayar Varai. Tatsangabhito Nirvinno Mumukshastvam Upashita. Prahlāda Mahārāja said, "My dear Lord, O Supreme Personality of Godhead, because I was born in an atheistic family, I'm naturally attached to material enjoyment. Therefore, kindly do not tempt me with these illusions. I'm very much afraid of material conditions, and I desire to be liberated from materialistic life. It is for this reason that I have taken shelter at your lotus feet." So we see Prahlāda Mahārāja's mentality being a little different from most of ours. Srila Prabhupada is supposed to have said, the only problem that my Western disciples have is that they're not sufficiently afraid of Maya. I'm not able to find this in the Veda base. Instead, I find references to it, but they're from devotees I trust. And it was certainly the case with me. If you want an example of how foolish I am, I was just remembering this morning, Joseph and I were talking about, I don't remember something, but I remembered 50 years ago, probably 50 years ago, right about now, summer of 1974, as was my custom, when I had a chance, I went body surfing. This is a Vaishnava sport, swimming and water fighting, and of course, if you live where I live, also body surfing, bodyboarding, surfing. Anything in the water, we figured this is spiritual. So one summer day, there was a break in my service, and I drove out to Sandy Beach on Oahu to go body surfing. And it was a pretty big day. And I had just caught a wave in. The thing about Sandy Beach, it's actually a very dangerous place because the beach is very steep. So the waves will break in very shallow water. And so I was swimming back out, and about a wave with a 6 to 7 foot face was looming in front of me, about to break, just about to break. And I dove through it. Now, this is the thing. I'd been going there for 7 years. I was a Sandy Beach local. I knew the place really well. But this wave, I dove through too high. You want to dive through kind of deep and drive yourself through the wave so you come out the back. But I went through too high, and I got pulled over the falls, and I went head first into the sand. Upside, just like, whew. If the lifeguards saw me, they probably thought, okay, time to get ready. And so my head hit the sand in about maybe 2 or 3 feet of water. And somehow or other, I didn't break my neck and I didn't drown. I was able to drag myself out of the water. Now, I didn't go back in the water for a couple of months because my neck hurt so much. But after a couple of months, there I was at Makapu'u or Sandy Beach whenever I had a chance. So I knew this was dangerous. And I remember when I dragged myself out of the water, I was lying there on the beach watching the waves, and I remember actually thinking, what's your business out there, bub? You're not a seal, you're not a porpoise. This is not your Kuleana, this is not your turf here. But somehow or other, in a couple of months, I forgot that, and there I was, back out there again. A little more careful about how I dove through the waves. But this is our problem. Many of us, have a thrill-seeking tendency. Speaking of thrill-seeking, one of my friends, Rupa Manohar, his son, Patri McLaughlin, very famous now. Pretty famous anyway among surfing circles. But he's very famous now because he's in the Guinness Book of World Records as having kite surfed the largest wave, being the person who kite surfed the largest wave. He kite surfed us, I think the wave was 73 or 74 feet at Jaws on Maui, Pe'ahi. So there's a little thrill-seeking. Some of us live for those adrenaline rushes. So this is our kind of our situation. And even if we're not doing it like that, jumping off of mountains, like one of my sons-in-law, who, when he came to Hawaii, had been a competitive big mountain snowboarder and skier, jumping off of mountains for fun. Even if we don't take risks like that, we'll think, oh, okay, maybe going to an ice cream shop's not such a bad thing, long as the sugar cones don't have eggs. Or, well, I've heard the pizza at this place is pretty darn good. Maybe every other pizza on the shelf is also going to be a cheese pizza. Maybe. We take these risks, or maybe we allow ourselves to become a little familiar. Srila Prabhupada refers, when he invokes verse 20 in the 7th chapter, Kamastaistai Hrita Jnana Prapajante Nadyevata. He says we're referring most of all to sexual enjoyment. It's a kind of a biological drive in human beings, especially when they're younger. And so we may not be too careful with something like that. But this kind of attachment that Prahlāda Mahārāja has been able to free himself from, actually takes away our intelligence. There was a little bit of intelligence lacking when I dove through that wave. A little bit of intelligence lacking sometimes if we allow ourselves to get a little too friendly with a member of the opposite sex, or too casual with other kinds of temptations. This is kind of our problem. So, what do we do? How do we get the things we want? Srila Prabhupada talks about this wonderful class of people who might worship Durga, or maybe Durga and Shiva. How many? Let me see the hands of everybody in the room who grew up trying to pursue their material desires, trying to fulfill their material desires by worshiping devatas. There we go.
One person from India.
Pardon? One person and a person from India. So this is quite an elevated situation. If we actually understand the divine nature of Krishna's material energy, then we deal with it very carefully. And so if we want material things, we worship the personification of his material nature. So that's more intelligence than most of us grew up with anyway. And this is probably better place than any to kind of tell this anecdote. When I was teaching at San Diego State, it seems like 1,000,000 years ago now, we would when we would make book orders for the next semester, we'd go check at the Aztec shops and the off-campus alternative bookstore, KB Books. And at San Diego State back then, KB Books was like right next to the campus. And I remember going in there one time to check on the book orders for my next semester, and there was a big poster on the wall, and the headline on the poster was "Justification for Higher Education," and the graphic was a big house up on a hill with lights coming through all the windows, and down below a big garage with, I think, 6 cars in it. And each one of those cars probably cost more than the house that my former wife and I bought on the Big Island. And justification for higher education. Well, I was a liberal arts major. My degrees are in English. And this one fellow on the radio, Garrison Keeler, used to make a joke about being an English major. He came up with this, it was called POEM, something or other, Professional Organization of English Majors, POEM, poem. And it's, you know, it's people who can't get a decent paying job because our degrees are in English. My older daughter when she finished college, she graduated with a double major, English and geography. And that qualified her to work as the manager of the produce department in a food co-op in someplace in Montana. And her other job was as a barista. Now this is a person who, she's about to turn 48, probably still hasn't tasted coffee. She's always been really strict about things like that. And she said, she just shrugged. She said, it's just a formula. You know, it's 3 of this and 4 of that and 2 of this or something like that. You know, whatever it is people ask for. She didn't have to know anything about coffee. They had a formula that they followed. And that was the kind of job that she got straight out of college. She's working as a librarian now, but and probably likes it a lot better. But yeah, we spend all kinds of money to get some college degrees, or we come up with all kinds of schemes. People have these different kinds of Ponzi schemes so that they can become wealthy. Or they invest in Bitcoin. There was a story in the news a few months ago about some character who forgot the passcode to his Bitcoin. And his Bitcoin had appreciated to a value of $7 million. And you only get 10 chances with your passcode, and your Bitcoin becomes locked forever. And he's trying and trying, and you can imagine the guy's probably sweating bullets by his 7th and 8th shot. His 9th shot, he's probably about to have a heart attack, and he probably damn near died when his 10th attempt failed.
Oh, no. 10th attempt failed.
The 10th attempt failed. $7 million worth of nothing, actually. I mean, what's Bitcoin anyway? This is a big part of our problem in this world. People create wealth for themselves by creating nothing. You know, they invest in stocks, bonds, or whatever like that, and they play a game. I knew devotees who would get up at 4 o'clock in the morning to do day trading rather than japa. Devotees in Hawaii, you know, they'd get up at 4 because, you know, the market opens 6 hours, 5 or 6 hours ahead of us if we're living in Hawaii. And they'd be up at 4 o'clock in the morning, kind of like sitting there at their screen, waiting for something to just begin to drop, and then try to pull the button before, you know, so they could make a few bucks with this particular trade and a few bucks with that particular trade. And they're actually contributing nothing to society with that, not even paying attention to their own spiritual practice. So this being afraid of Maya, Krishna tells us in the Bhagavad Gita, Srila Prabhupada cites this verse, that one of the noble qualities of a human being is actually being aware of the disadvantages of birth, death, old age, and disease. Janma mrityu jara vyadhi dukkha dosha anudarshana. Dosha has several meanings. Prabhupada uses the word evil in his translation. But dosha can also just mean disadvantages or problems. And so if we don't understand what a big problem that is, what a big problem it is to be to live for 9 months in the womb. Well, if you're lucky, I wasn't in the womb that long myself, and when I was born, I wasn't expected to make it through the day. Here I am, almost 77 years later, still making trouble. There was trouble that morning. My father caused trouble. And we don't remember how awful that situation really was. We think of it as, oh, it must have been warm and cozy. But mom eats stuff sometimes that doesn't agree with us, with our tender senses. Maybe back then they didn't know that they weren't supposed to drink, so maybe my mom had a few drinks here and there. And you're really cramped. And it's like some big deal if the kid tries to shift and try to find a comfortable position. Oh, he's kicking. It's the kid trying to get comfortable, for goodness sake. And then you get, like, one devotee I heard was talking about the problem, what a problem it was. And she's a tiny person. What a problem it is squeezing a watermelon-sized person, through this orifice in your body. It's really painful. I was actually present for my first daughter's birth, and it's a trip, let me tell you. And I was suffering vicariously. She was the one doing the real work and going through the real suffering. And growing up, all the stuff we go through growing up, we forget about it. We remember a little thing here and there. Some of it's actually quite traumatic. And it impacts our life. And sometimes we carry lifetimes, more lifetimes than we can count, of trauma that we deal with. And so we do awkward things in our lives, sometimes harmful to ourselves, sometimes harmful to other people as a response. So this is our situation. And then there's disease and death. Some people have already forgotten how awful this COVID-19 pandemic was. It was, I didn't get I haven't had COVID yet, but several people in our temple in Honolulu were sick, and I remember how sick they were. It was pretty bad. One devotee said, oh, it wasn't that bad. And I said, oh, you want me to show you the texts that you sent me while you were sick? A little reminder. So, we forget these things. And then death, we just deny it. We just pretend it's not going to happen to us, right? This is kind of how we live, as if it's not really going to happen to us. Of course, at a certain age, in his purport to 13.9, to that group of verses, Srila Prabhupada says, no one wants to get old. Well, most of us don't want to be old. We don't mind getting old because we're not ready to die. We're not ready to die when we're 25, like when I was body surfing. We're not ready to die when we're 50. We're not ready to die when we're 70. So, the only good thing about old age is that not everybody gets to actually suffer all the pangs. I'm hoping that no one looks when I try to get up from the seat in a few minutes, because I'm all creaky and rusty. So that's no fun either. So Prahlāda Mahārāja, he's beyond all this. And how is it that he's beyond all this? Because he's, as we heard in yesterday's verse, he's akama. But the Bhagavatam tells us in the second canto, akama sarvakama akama va moksha kama udarari tivrena bhakti yogena yajeta purusha param. Whether you're completely free from desire, and Srila Prabhupada says in his purport to that verse, that means devotees, because they don't have any material desires. Or you're sarvakama, you want everything. Whatever happens to flash before your eyes, I got to have one of those. And if you haven't seen it, you'll hear advertising telling you how much you need it, how much better your life will be. Like the old, I don't know if they still have these commercials on TV, but the guy on the subway with his face in someone's armpit, aren't you glad you used Dial? Don't you wish everyone did? Advertising, the basis of advertising is fear. You know, fear of being stinky, fear of not getting the girl, fear of missing out, all kinds, you know, it's really based on fear. I read a book on writing ad copy, and that was the big point this book made, that the appeals in advertising is really about fear. Or mokshakama, or if you want, you know, if you actually want to become free from all this foolishness, whatever it is, the best way to attain those desires, to attain the fulfillment of those desires, is to actually take shelter of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So Srila Prabhupada ends here, says, by describing Prahlāda Mahārāja's character, he says, although he's born of a materialistic father, anybody here not born of a materialistic father? Mine really was. I'll tell you sometime. But because he was a devotee, he had no material desires. And he refers here to Rupa Goswami's definition of pure devotional service. Anyabhilashita shunyam jnana karmadhyanavritam anukulyena krishnanushilanam bhaktiruttama. Like many definitions, this definition has two parts. It has the swarupa lakshana, the essential part, and the tatastha lakshana, or the marginal aspect. So the first line is the marginal aspect. Anyabhilashita shunyam jnana karmadhyanavritam. Completely free from any other desire, just as we see in the second verse of Srimad Bhagavatam. Dharma prodchita kaitavatra paramo nirmatsaranam satam. Completely free. Completely. This is a text for someone who's completely rejected praujhita, all material desires, and the language there that's used there is quite strong. Krishna, at the end of the Bhagavad Gita, Krishna pretty much says the same thing. He says, give up all conventional senses of dharma because they're self-centered, and take shelter in me alone. If you do that, he says, I'll protect you from even the reactions to any sins that might be incurred in doing so. And at the beginning of the Bhagavatam, it's, from what I understand, it's the past tense. For those who have already completely rejected, praujhita, all material desires, but it's characterized as kaitava dharma, cheating religion. Why is it cheating religion? Well, what do we mean, first of all, by kaitava dharma? And Krishnadas Kaviraj tells us that in the 22nd chapter of Madhya Lila, when Lord Chaitanya is instructing Sanatana Goswami. When he discusses this verse, he actually asks, what do we mean by cheating religion, cheating dharma, kaitava dharma? What do we mean? Dharma, artha, kama, moksha, vansha. The aspiration for personal virtue, for the material progress that we might gain through that virtue, the pleasure that we might gain through that material progress, and once we've seen through the whole scam, the desire to become free of all that nonsense. Why is it cheating religion? Because it's about me. It's about my virtue. It's about my getting ahead in the world. It's about my pleasure, about my freedom. But the Bhagavatam's not about that. The Bhagavatam's about real freedom, real liberation, which is attained only when we've completely gotten rid of all those things and our life is dedicated to simply satisfying Krishna's desires. Just as we were hearing yesterday when Dravida was clarifying this typo in the purport to that verse. And because I have it in a PDF and I use an app that I can do that with, I changed it. I had noticed it before, but yesterday I thought, okay, I am going to change it. I changed the book. Shoot me now. And it's really clear in Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur's commentary on that that's exactly what Srila Prabhupada was using in his purport that it doesn't mean satisfying my desires, but only satisfying Krishna's desires. So that's what bhakti is. And just to make it clearer, as he does throughout the Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu, and as Srila Krishnadas Kaviraj Goswami does throughout Sri Chaitanya Charitamrita, he uses Shastra to back up his assertion. So he uses a verse from Hari Bhakti Sudhodaya. Sarvopadhi vinir muktam tatpadatvena nirmalam rishikena rishikesha sevanam bhaktiruttama. Same thing in different words. You've got the tatastha lakshana in the first line. Sarvopadhi vinir muktam. Giving up all kinds of identification, becoming completely free from all kinds of identification with matter. And I used to sometimes joke, he doesn't say some upadhi, sarva upadhi, all designations. Whatever label we are accustomed to wearing, that's not you. That's just not you. Nahang vipro nachanarapatya napi vaishanu shudra. I'm not any of these things. They sound cool. Oh, I'm a Brahmin, I'm a sannyasi. Well, whatever. No, I'm not. I'm simply a servant of those who've dedicated their lives to serving the servants of the Lord. So that's pure devotional service. So Srila Prabhupada is pointing us in that direction at the end of this purport, that the solution to all our problems, the problems that we've forgotten, the problems that we may not yet be aware of, the solution to all those problems is taking shelter of service to the lotus feet of the Lord. And then when we can actually become free from all material desires, we can actually become a kama, like Prahlāda Mahārāja. And when temptations are dangled in front of us, we just say, I don't have time for that. Who's got time for that stuff? So this is the big point of this verse. When I was looking at this verse this morning, I thought, the class is right there in the verse. Anyone who knows me knows that I generally look for two things if I'm thinking of trying to understand a text. And that one is context and the other is connections. And so when I'm reading Srila Prabhupada's purports, I look for the verses that he cites, either directly cites or alludes to. And then I go to those verses, and I look in the purports, and I look for verses that are mentioned or alluded to in those verses. And sometimes I'll end up building a class. I can spend the whole morning just chasing down those connections. So we look for this purport actually kind of suggests how we might structure the class. I just thought this paragraph is so perfect. It's just amazing the way Srila Prabhupada composed this paragraph. Okay, I'll stop here before the hook comes. Is there any discussion? Does anyone have comments, questions, or Badri Narayan Maharaj?
I have a question, but it's a little bit different. Let's see if somebody has a question on the context of your class.
Okay.
Because I don't want to throw things off the track.
Well, yeah, okay. So, Dr. Joseph.
You brought up the fear of Maya. All my life, I've been pretty much fearless in the way I've lived, and I've had to modify my behavior and take it easy, on my vehicles over there. Anyway, how can we have a deeper respect for fear? Because I'm fearless.
Well, the question suggests a couple of things. One is by, I think, paying closer attention. If we understand the extent of the suffering in this world, that it should at least give us pause. I've told this story before. Once when I was driving across country, I'm an island boy, and if the drive's over 2 or 2.5 hours, I can't handle it. So when I was living on the mainland, I would drive across country, sometimes for a couple of days at a time, sometimes for more than that. Drove from North Carolina to California a couple of times. I'd listen to lectures, I'd listen to kirtans, sometimes I'd listen to NPR. And I was listening to an interview with a musician, singer-songwriter named Rhiannon Giddens. And she was talking about an album that she wrote of songs based on slave narratives, especially women's slave narratives. And she was talking about the background to this one song that she wrote, and then the background to another song that she wrote. And I just thought, and this occurs to me sometimes, we actually do these things to each other? How is that, how is that possible that we actually do these things to each other and that people survive it? Talking about the way slaves were abused. But if we think about the things that people do to each other every darn day in this world, because of our selfish nature, so I was driving along and I was thinking about that, and I was just thinking, okay, so that's how we treated enslaved people at a certain period in our country's history. And then I started thinking about all the other ways we are suffering. People are suffering. And then, not just in the United States over the last 400 or 500 years, just in the Americas over the last 400 or 500 years, and then how they're suffering in the world today. Stuff that I've gone through that I think, oh, how did I survive that? It's nothing compared to people living in Ukraine the last 2.5 years. Or, people living in certain parts of Africa or Southeast Asia or wherever. It's just so much. And then I thought, and that's just the human beings. And at a certain point, I couldn't breathe, and I had to pull over on the side of the road because I was really losing control of my mind and my faculties, contemplating the suffering in this world. And I just thought, time to buckle down and get a little serious about my bhakti practice, because that pure devotional service is the only release. So now the other thing is, how do we become actually fearless, consistently fearless? Because if you look up do not fear Maya, if you actually find the direct quotations you'll find attributed to Srila Prabhupada in the Veda base is, I am not afraid of Maya because I've taken complete shelter of Krishna. Now Prahlāda Mahārāja, who has taken complete shelter of the Lord to the extent that the Lord appeared in this gruesome, beautifully gruesome, ghastly form to protect his devotee. This is how much shelter. We were just speaking last night at the Chula Vista Krishna Lounge, how we're reading from chapter 4, verse 11, that the Lord responds according to our approach, according to the manner and the intensity of our approach. So this is how much, this is evidence of how surrendered to the Lord Prahlāda Mahārāja is, that the Lord appeared in this beautiful, ghastly form to protect his devotee from his abusive father. His devotee, but also the rest of the universe as well. So this is how we actually become really not afraid of Maya. Prabhupada said, I am not afraid of Maya because I know Maya cannot touch me, because I've taken shelter of the Lord's lotus feet. So there are kind of two ways to look at that. How can we become a little more wary? And then also, how can we become actually fearless, rather than just reckless, like me at Sandy Beach? Is that okay? Anything else, Dravida Prabhu?
I was just.
Wait, I was in queue with you unless you have a...
Well, I just have an addendum to 15 seconds,
No, go ahead, go ahead.
You put yourself at the back of the line, Maharaj.
So this idea of how do we get so that we're not afraid of Maya, it called to mind one of Prahlāda's prayers near the end, where he says, and I had to look it up and see, what does it say there? That I'm very afraid of Maya. I'm very afraid of the attraction. You know, he's painting himself as a, you know, and therefore I, you know, have taken full shelter of your lotus feet or something like that. So Prabhupada says that's one of our problems. We're not afraid of Maya enough. So there's a certain paradox there.
Yeah.
If you're afraid of Maya, then you can get to the point of fearlessness.
Yeah, it's kind of a negative impetus for taking shelter of the Lord. We'll accept both the positive and negative impetus. But in Ryan Maharaj.
As far as the, you know, your good point, you're not afraid enough. One of my favorite bumper stickers, I have a few of them that are my favorites. One of them says, if you're not paranoid, you haven't been paying attention.
Yeah.
So there's that one. But the, yeah, my question was this, because we glorify Prahlāda, and the storyline also is that, you know, he's not asking, I don't want anything from you. You know, that you don't, you know, I'm not a businessman, I'm not asking, I just want to serve you. And the essence of bhakti is that spontaneous love without expectation of result. But then again, he closes out, he says he's afraid of material conditions, he wants liberation from materialistic life. This is today's verse. So, I mean, that's not much for Krishna. I'm afraid of material conditions. Well, that's not, you know, that you want to please Krishna. He says, I desire liberation from materialistic life. I want relief from suffering and anxiety. I want. And then he says, it is for this reason I've taken shelter of your lotus feet. So doesn't it sound like, hey, I'm taking shelter because I want relief from suffering, and I want to get, you know, I want relief from this. Sounds pretty self-centered to me.
Yeah. He presents himself in his humility. He presents himself as a mumuksha, as someone whose aspiration is liberation. He's actually attained liberation, but in his humility, he's actually speaking on our behalf. We're born of atheistic, even if they're religious. I don't think any of us were born of parents who were actually mystics. Perhaps we were. You know, I mean, my family was Methodists. We went special. Well, when we lived in Lompoc, we were a prominent family in a very small town. We were the descendants of one of the town's founders. So we went to church on Sundays. But my dad was an agnostic, a hard agnostic, probably at least since he was 18, since he. At the very beginning of World War II, he was sent in the Navy to Pearl Harbor in February of 1942 as a photographer to document as they call it, recovery efforts in Pearl Harbor. That means hauling other 18 and 19 and 20-year-old farm boys' bodies out of these wrecked battleships and carriers and cruisers. Destroyers and stuff. And that was it for him and God. He told me this himself. That was it for him and God. He said, I don't know if there's a God, but if there is, I don't want to have anything to do with that SOB. And he was a hard agnostic the rest of his life, which makes it interesting that his oldest son was holding his hand, singing the Maha Mantra to him as he left his body. Well, there's a whole story there, but yeah, he certainly must have done something right. But, and I had the opportunity to help him in that way. It was such a great blessing. But, you know, so Prahlāda is presenting himself as a descendant of, you know, an atheistic family, the scion of an atheistic family, and someone who should be very much afraid So he's actually speaking on our behalf. We should be a little concerned when material allurements are dangled. Someone offers us something, you always should be wondering, unless it's someone you really know and trust, we should be wondering what's the catch, right? The worm's there, ooh, big juicy worm, or maybe someone's expert fly fisher, and they tie very alluring fly lures for their fishing in the streams or lakes or whatever. And the fish is, oh God, that looks like a really tasty one. And the guy gives a quick jerk to the hook, and the guy's stuck. The poor fish is stuck. And that's what Prahlād's concerned about. He's showing us that even someone as exalted as Prahlāda is wary of any material allurements. Same thing with Dhruva Mahārāja. Dhruva Mahārāja actually engaged in bhakti as a sarvakami. He wanted the whole thing, right? He wanted the whole enchilada. He wanted a kingdom bigger, greater than his great-great-grandfather's. And his great-great-grandfather is Brahma. The whole universe is his. It's his kulyana, his responsibility. So, Dhruva Mahārāja, by practicing his sadhana and attaining the fruit of that sadhana by getting direct darshan of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, immediately thought, oh God, how stupid. He said, I'm like a poor man. He's in the Bhagavatam. He says, I'm like a poor man who gets an audience with the king and can ask for half his kingdom. And I'm satisfied walking away with a bag of rice. Or in I think it's Hari Bhakti Sudodaya again. It says, I'm like someone who is looking for pieces of broken glass scattered here and there. Instead, I found the most valuable jewel. So this is, Prahlāda Mahārāja is modeling for us what, how we should be feeling and behaving. That we should, when these material allurements come, Prabhupada refers to them as illusions. He says, don't tempt me with these illusions, these illusory pleasures. It's not there actually in the language of the text, but Prabhupada brings that sense into the verse itself. Is that okay?
Yeah, very good.
Bhakti Sundar Goswami Maharaj.
Yeah, I just wanted to confirm.
Wait, you got a mic.
Mike?
I just wanted to confirm the story I heard about Prahlāda. Hare Krishna. Now it's better. Huh? I just want to confirm with the Vaishnavas. I heard this pastime about Prabhupada. I'm not sure if it is, bona fide. I just want to confirm with you that once Prabhupada was walking with the devotees in a park, and one devotee asked Prabhupada, why Maya doesn't let us go? She's holding us very tightly. She will not let us go. And Prabhupada smiled and went to a tree, hugged the tree and said, Maya, leave me alone, let me go. So have you heard this, any of you?
I haven't heard that story.
Doesn't mean I haven't heard it. It didn't happen. I just never heard it.
There's a story, though.
Very nice example.
Yeah.
Prabhupada give that example.
Yeah.
Yeah. My dear tree, let go of me. There's a story. I'm not sure I'm going to remember it, all the details or tell it correctly, but there's a story that makes that same point, that one guru was having some interaction with his disciple, and he wanted him to do some service, and the disciple says, well, not today, I have some family duties to take care of, or I have to do something with business. And this went on and on and on. So the guru went and jumped in a river, and he was going down the river, and I think he grabbed onto a branch or something, and he said, I'm dying here, and I don't know how to save myself. And the disciples yell at him, let go of the branch, and I'll save you, something like that. So we're hanging on to Maya. Maya won't let go of us because we're hanging on to her. We're thinking, okay, well, maybe this time it'll work. Maybe that desire can be actually be fulfilled. We won't let go of her. She's quite willing to let go of us when we've taken shelter of the Lord, because her service is to actually help us develop that strength. Is that okay? I'd like to, if Bhakti Narayan Maharaj hasn't heard that story, then we would have to do some research.
I was just going through what I could remember.
Yeah.
Because we should wrap up.
Yeah.
But the
Oh gosh, yeah.
the Prabhupada was asked on a morning walk, why is Maya so strong? With the same setup, we're trying to become Krishna conscious. Why is Maya so strong? And Prabhupada's response was, because your purpose is weak. So really, once again, it's back on us.
Yeah. Thank you all so much for your attention and your patience. Gruntharaja Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai. Gaur Bhakta Vrinda ki jai.